I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in to this short module on privacy and security for families. Parents, we need to be able to take charge of what's going on in our homes, especially when it pertains to our family's participation online and what it really means to be a digital citizen. We want to take into account that there are a lot of different things that go into uh, knowing how to protect yourself, but then knowing what the threats are and really being able to set up good habits for your family. So, this presentation is brought to you by the partners at Instructional Design and Evaluation Associates. We really want to think about what are the different areas in the family that need to be covered. So, we start to look at how all of these different things come together for the different people in the family. The smallest ones, they're getting their hands on information so quickly these days. It's almost as if pacifiers and rattles and things of that nature have become obsolete to an extent. And from a very early age, we'll look at some statistics later on, but from a very early age, I know my son has developed an uncanny ability to operate the iPad, especially with the children's applications that are downloadable now for parents that are really great for supplementing education and giving them some wholesome entertainment. But we still want to be aware of how we can secure our devices so that they're not accidentally clicking onto different websites or exposing the family's devices or network to different threats. It's, even when we start to get into the tweens, ages 8 to 12, they're developing more and more autonomy. Their own identity is starting to become more prevalent online. They're starting to participate in more social um, media websites. We really want to be able to look into the things that really affect the participation of our of our children online and make sure that they can stay safe. These teenagers of the millennium have almost surpassed what speed and time it takes to learn things. And they are involved in such a rapid development in terms of what they are able to use for their entertainment, for their education, for access to for socialization, even with their classes. A lot of schools are mandating that there are online classes and virtual classes and things of that nature so that students and teenagers can be better prepared for the new millennium. However, the integrity that goes into using social media wisely can have a huge effect on how we get different elements of participation. When we think about our teenagers, we really want to start to think about how much autonomy they have online. They are being encouraged to train and to study online. They are getting certifications and participating in different programs academically that are really allowing teenagers to get a head start on what will be required for them to be successful in whatever career that they undertake once they graduate. Also, we want to think about how teenagers really have to protect their own integrity and being able to participate responsibly with their friends and socializing in a way that will not jeopardize what they are really gearing themselves to do with all of the neat things and cool things that the internet and different online activities offer. So we really want to take into account the different levels of the family when it comes down to our children and how we can better grasp the different threats that are out there, how we can prepare them to navigate those threats and ultimately secure their digital citizenship. Parents, we really need to be able to take a hard and fast look at what our kids are looking at. Being able to know what they're involved in, knowing which sites they're participating in, knowing where their most interests are coming from. What are the biggest influences online? What are they spending their most time doing online? Even when it comes down to participating in online games and things of that nature, really wanting to have a good knowledge of how we can participate in their lives without being so controlling that they don't have any room to develop their digital citizenship as individuals. We really need to look at how we can interpret the law when it comes down to all of the different areas that are protected legally. There are so many different roles that need to be considered when it comes down to securing the family's online citizenship, digital citizenship. We really want to be able to know what each parent can do to be involved in a way that really makes a difference in the lives of their children as they participate as students and as they socialize with their friends. We know that people of all ages are really getting involved in digital citizenship in a way that really equates their involvement online the same way you would the citizenship of a city or a neighborhood or a state, a nation. A global citizen even has responsibilities to think about how our digital citizenship is impacted. You know, we have to look at all of the different things that we do online. It doesn't seem like it takes a lot of time to do much of the things we do, whether we're just checking emails, whether we're checking out YouTube, whether just surfing websites, shopping online. All of those different things leave a digital footprint or fingerprint. It leaves a trail that allows people to know what you're interested in, how you use the internet. People that are very savvy and can put together the different trends can use those things to threaten your digital citizenship and do fraudulent things. So we really want to know what our children are involved in because they will oftentimes not have the knowledge or the experience going into this new world of digital citizenship so that they will involve themselves in things that tickle their fancy, make them excited. It's fun, but being aware of how they're doing and what they're doing, making sure that they are not damaging any future opportunities, their reputations, or exposing them to any threats. The three things that we really need to focus on is the conduct, contact, and content. We really need to understand those three different levels of protection because essentially people will use the internet to uh, gather information based on the content that you use and be able to get in contact with you inappropriately. Uh, when we say that that's the digital identity online that can be stolen, whether it's your credit card, whether with your children having access to applications and those applications being hooked up to a password that allows them to purchase things online, such as the Apple Store. We want to the iTunes Store. We want to be able to put together a string of good habits so that your kids are not being exposed to the inappropriate things that are out there. You want to learn how to talk with your kids. Find an appropriate time to sit down with them and really let them know what's going on. Because it's so easy to just think that, oh, yeah, the kids know more than we do. Yeah, that can be a bad thing, especially as kids are getting more access to these different programs earlier, these different devices earlier. We have a program for my son online, Kids TV. We have it set up so that he can only access that program while he's on, and those different types of strategies help to keep him safe. But if you look at the statistics here, we see that the numbers are rising by ghastly increments. If you consider how the numbers have tripled over such a short period of time in terms of kids that are using um, electronic devices to access the internet, and also having knowing some type of regular routine with that. When you talk to your kids, you really want to be able to communicate what it is that you expect from them. You don't want to sugarcoat things. You don't want to put it into a situation where you're thinking about how they're doing, what they're doing all the time. You want to be able to put your expectations out there and let them know that that's what is intended to play out in their behavior. So whether or not you're able to check in on their activity once a week, or whether or not you're able to check in with them, however, periodically, you want to get into a good habit of just checking up on, what they're looking at, what they're spending their time doing, who they're spending their time talking to and communicating with. These are our children. I can't stress that enough. These are our children. They're not our friends. They don't have to like the way that the world works, but we need to be upfront and honest with them enough so that they can get a real grasp on how things work, and gain a strong perspective on how they can keep themselves safe. We want to keep the smart choices in the forefront of their minds. We can't allow them to just do what feels good or makes them happy or what's fun or what everybody else is doing. We have to make sure that they are thinking futuristically, thinking about who they are becoming, thinking about the people that they are, the families that they represent, knowing that the integrity involved in their online participation goes a long way. Now, you think about some of the things that can happen and may have already happened, but those are the things that we want to try to steer away from in terms of making those online trends, making those traces online, have the longer trails, the longest trails, moving away from those things that are inappropriate or even questionable, so that your children have as a good a chance of making the best out of themselves as possible. You want to make sure that you also keep the boundaries in terms of time. What's off limits, in terms of websites, what type of content are they looking at, what is acceptable. So really thinking about those things when you communicate with them, and finding a really good time to really sit down and just speak with them. It's important that we give them support. We can't just think that the talk is enough. We really have to be able to show patience over time. The conversations that we involve ourselves with our students, with our children, has to be the same as a teacher would with students. A teacher wouldn't just blow off, any learning moments. A good teacher would not blow off any learning moments. They would make sure to capitalize on any opportunities that they had to make sure that students have expectations the same way that your children should have expectation. And you reinforce those things in small doses. In small doses, when you teach those expectations up front and they're reinforced consistently, then that persistence is what pays off in the long run. You really want to be able to think about being approachable, with the questions, that can really be sometimes outlandish up front, especially with the issues of our day in America, whether it's same gender marriage, whether it's transgender, whether it's LGBTQT, really trying to think about how these different issues play a real role in the lives of our children in school, and they participate with different students in different cultures and from different backgrounds, and they really have a heightened sense um, of really having a heightened sense of questions and wanting to know why, really being inquisitive. So we want to be able to listen and receive what they're saying so that they're not feeling as if, yeah, back when we were younger, there were no cell phones. There were pay phones. The most modern technology was a pager. And as technology began to boom, we find ourselves overlapped with children that have been born into a culture where a smartphone is as much an everyday use as a toothbrush. So we think about what they know and how well they know it and how much access they have to it and how much time they're spending with those things and what they're learning. And as those questions come up, they should feel comfortable with coming to us. They should feel comfortable with bringing the different issues that exist online, whether it's from social perspectives or whether it's from an academic perspective, so that they're really having a balanced interaction online. So even when they do recognize threats, they're learning to recognize what those threats are when they see something suspicious. They're learning to recognize what those suspicious things are. We need to be able to know what they know and try to stay ahead of the curve. When you're thinking about our kids at the youngest age, we think about how we can best protect them. And you'll see right here some of the simplest ways that you can get involved with protecting your kids online. Oftentimes, we think that just having a lock code on our screen, having a swipe password or a gesture of some sort, but we really need to look at how we can access the different parental settings and different applications that allow um, kids to access what we want them to. We want to be able to limit how much time they're using also. We want to think about which browsers they're using. Um, Look online to find some of the things that parents are using to filter and block. Also, look at the security settings when you go to the settings area of the different applications that you use. We want to learn how these different applications work. For the sake of time, we're not able to go into any uh, examples of applications and how any one particular application might work. But plenty of applications out there have tutorials online and can also be navigated quite easily in the settings area to find out what content is appropriate for your small child and what's not. Thinking about the tweens, these 8 to 12-year-olds, we really want to look at the independence starting to develop. Most 8 to 12-year-olds are starting to own their own smartphones, but we need to teach them about what's a trustworthy website, knowing that you can't just go out onto the internet and participate on any website, that some websites are not secure and can be tracking your movement and can actually be getting into um, how many different applications your child uses that aren't secure would uh, consequently affect how many different um, online threats they are being exposed to. So we really want to take some time to examine that. So we can see that using sentences is a really good way to upgrade the use of our passwords. That's just a simple way to do it. Of course, you can use whatever extended method you want, but numeric codes are also good, all numbers. But something that is a little bit less connected to your identity, birthdays, are always something that's common. Birth years are something that's always common. So thinking of numbers that are not as common, and things that are not often used would be ideal when you're developing your phone security. Gestures are a good way also to upgrade your security. I know different smartphones are having the different dot matrix on the screen that allows you to gesture your screen code. So that's always a good way to upgrade your security for your device on your smartphone. Some smartphones even have the fingerprint capability in terms of how you can unlock the phone to access the device. Knowing the different mobile applications. Now, applications are really just the things that are downloaded through the App Store. They're games, the different things that you can use for shopping, things that allow you to link to social media. Really need to have a good idea of what the mobile applications are that your kids are using. And like I said, we're going to take a look after the module is complete and see some of the different websites that allow us to track what exactly your children are doing online. Is so important because the links that are embedded into some of these sites really take away from the credibility of some of the sites that you already have set up. And especially as kids get older and have access to different devices, really being able to know for a fact what's being used and how it's being used is paramount. Looking again for the different screenshots that are being taken by your kids, looking at the different pictures that they're putting online. Um, those things really help to understand how. Okay, scratch. Checking out the screenshots of the applications that are being used by your children is a good way to know whether or not the content is appropriate. Those screenshots appear right before you purchase the application. You really want to look at the ratings and the reviews to know what other people are saying, because oftentimes other parents will let you know whether or not the content is appropriate for the age group that is intended to, or whether or not there is some type of um, foreseeable threats or pitfalls or glitches that might expose your family to some different types of privacy or protection issues. Research the developer, know who made the application and whether or not this is some startup company or some teenager that made an application. There's so many different people out there that make applications. Uh, you really want to know who's making the application and check the information that that application is able to collect. When you are texting, you really want to take a look at some of the things that we've noted here. We talked about how to avoid some of the misunderstanding by using the shorthand and taking into consideration how those things will be received by the person that's being texted. You don't often think about the tone that is behind what's being sent in a text message. So we want to figure out how we can phrase what we say in ways that will be received in a way that we intended to. Sometimes we are mad. Sometimes we do, feel negatively, but there are ways that are appropriate to express that, and our children need to understand that too. And when someone is mad at our children, it'll happen, as they are socializing. We really want to know that our kids understand that they don't have to accept that approach. If someone has a problem that they want to resolve, then texting is usually not the best way to resolve that issue. So, learning how to block people that are persistent and sending text messages, whether they're from another child, cyberbullying, or whether it's from some online organization that's phishing, looking for information that can be posted online um, in terms of personal or financial information. So teaching our children that they don't have to respond to that, and being able to let you know when they are being solicited in that regard. Text messages are one big threat that can really expose our children because they allow them to send pictures. And thinking about the pictures that can be sent in the privacy of a bedroom or a bathroom can really expose our children to some unsavory conduct that could affect them long into their adult years. So, really letting them know that not only is it inappropriate, but as they begin to age and they begin to feel more sexual as a person, that there are appropriate ways to express their sexual feelings, and that sending pictures of their sexual parts is never appropriate because it's against the law in a lot of situations, and we don't want to put them into a situation where they could be breaking the law. And number two, we don't want them to be put in a situation where they could be endangering their reputation. So being able to get that message across, that even having a picture saved in their phone, if they click the picture that was sent into a group text and it's not deleted, and it's a part of their current and uprunning files, and there's some type of investigation because there's a law being broken, then there's obviously going to be a connection. So you want your child to put themselves as far away from these different type of exposures as possible by letting them know up front that this is inappropriate. This is inappropriate behavior. Anything that could possibly suggest sex being sent through text messages, this is something that needs to be immediately reported from a child to the parent and from a parent to an authority, because we don't want that type of behavior being uh, ingrained into the everyday happenings of our teens, and it begins with our parents. So we need to be able to put that into perspective as well. Thinking about how we can have more discipline in terms of keeping our devices secure, it's really a matter of being aware and knowing that your children know how to keep the network in your home, your Wi-Fi, secure, knowing that you are not exposing yourself to any type of potential threats when you're participating online using someone else's website. I'm sorry, using someone else's Wi-Fi connection. So you make sure that they're being provided with a WPA or WPA2 password. You can do some research to see exactly how those things will apply to signing into your smartphone or personal device. And a very, very good practice to get into the habit of doing is not staying permanently logged into accounts. When you're sleeping, when you're not using the account, you may not be logged in for days, and that gives opportunity for people that can see what you're doing online to access that information that you have when you're signed in. So, for example, having your password permanently saved for your banking account is a bad idea. Having your username permanently logged in is one thing, but when you have the background running and there are access to what is most secure, you want to make sure that you're logged off. So don't stay permanently logged on to any one account for any long period of time, because it increases your exposure to certain threats that exist from staying logged in. Certain tools are being used to hack into your personal information. The malware is what they call it. It's usually just a certain tool that's either built, developed, or purchased that allows you to hack into people's personal devices. And it usually comes in the way of a link or some type of email that asks you to open something or fill something out. Uh, it often will come in a version of some type of pop-up ad. It'll redirect you to some type of website you don't want to participate in. So obviously, you want to be able to X out of those things. Uh, Take the mouse to the highest corner of the left or the right screen and X out of it immediately. Delete uh, all um, previous emails and subsequent emails, and also being able to block those different uh, sources, whether they're coming through you via text or email. But understand that malware can really cause some problems on your devices. It's used to install viruses and steal your personal info. There are different packages that you can even purchase to make sure that you're not being exposed to malware. Again, we talked about creating those strong passwords and making sure you don't share them with anybody, because the malware attacks come from people that can easily click a link that exposes the entire network to some type of um, divisive or corrosive experience. Even as a professional working for a large school district, uh, there was a massive email sent from a third party to our entire staff. Incidentally, one staff member clicked on the link to look at the page. It was related to education, but it was from a source that was not secure and exposed the entire network to some corrosive activity. So, understanding that things that are questionable, understanding what some of the signs are in terms of who's sending it, is that sender credible? Is that person someone that you've heard of? Is that person uh, someone that is a part of some type of scam? These different things can be Googled and researched, even if you have a question about it before you open it. So, allowing our children to have good habits to question things that don't look right, uh, whether they're spelled right, or there seems like there's some type of encryption involved or some type of overt attempt to attain personal information, we want to avoid that at all costs. And teaching our children how to avoid that early is so important. Also, one important tip is understanding that this URL, the www resource, or the location, I'm sorry, for different websites, is not secure unless it has been prefaced with the HTTPS. It'll usually look like HTTPS and then a colon, and we'll look at an example of that when we go out into the website to check out some of the different ways we can start looking at how we can protect ourselves. One of the biggest ways that a lot of the malware sources get into our personal information and can access some of our private information is they offer you free things. So let your kids know that if it's too good to be true, it probably is, and that the free thing that they offer usually are never free. Things in this world are never without cost. So we want to make sure that the reality of this is in the forefront of our children's minds when they're participating online, so that they're not tricked into thinking that they're getting something for nothing. A lot of scam artists do what's called phishing. You know, they will put different pop-ups. They will send you different ads through the email, and these are the different things that are used to fish around, if you will, to find ways to access your account and steal your identity. Committing fraud is a felony, and most people don't realize that they are exposed to these type of activities when they're not as careful as they can be when they're participating online. So knowing that these scam artists use texts and emails and will often have a software program to publicly publish pop-ups to access information through accidental clicks or clicks that are not really being um, taken care of. You really want to take care of the clicks that you're making. Know what you're clicking on. The children oftentimes will click on something because it's colorful or bright or because it's blinking or because it's offering them something free. So knowing that those one click programs can oftentimes expose them to the scam artists is something that we want to make sure that the children are aware of. Obviously, you don't want to participate in any suspicious emailing or texts. There's some research that can be done in terms of how scam artists work just by simply clicking in the suspicious name or email that's been sent to you through the text or email and attaching the word scam to it. If you do feel like you're being targeted, the website that is uh, published here will allow there to be some type of complaint to be filed or an investigation to take place. So please don't underestimate the severity of the crime that comes along with these scams that come from phishing from information. So again, take note of the websites published here and know that if you have any question about those suspicious activities, that they can be addressed uh, using those sites. When you think about being protected by the law, you think about the local law enforcement that can always be your first outlet. You may not want to call 911, but contacting your local authority through their non emergency number with any questions that exist about online participation or digital citizenship, because there are things that exist outside of our realm of knowledge that can often cause us to have questions, and we want to really have those questions addressed so that there's no cause for alarm when it comes down to how we're being protected and where we are most vulnerable so that we are not exposed to the threats that exist online from these different thieves that use our identity from participating in what is usually just harmless um, activities and applications. One of the biggest things that we need to take note of here for our children is COPA, the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act. It's enforced by the Federal Trade Commission, and it is very, very strict about how information is acquired from different organizations and different sites online. It is very, very important that you give your permission before your child's picture is taken, before any of their personal information is taken, before anything that might give any indication as their whereabouts. From the ages of 0 to 13, children are protected by this Federal Trade Commission. Now, it only protects children from this age because we talked about before the autonomy of the child. It starts to become greater, and they need to be able to take more responsibility for their actions online. And they have that much time to learn about proper participation online so that they might not be exposed to the different threats that exist here. And by chance, if someone is taking advantage, then we want to make sure that parents know that this law is enforced, and you can contact the authorities and know that your child is protected. Again, these are some of the things that COPA protects. Just looking at um, the photos, that's the obvious one. But even when it's come down to asking, even your child's name, we don't want to let them know anything about where they are. We don't want to let them know anything about them because that's the beginning. They can always track what you're doing, who you are, and how you participate online as a digital citizen. So people that are very savvy in their thievery, they will use a software package that allows them to identify different IP addresses, that allows them to track the whereabouts of individuals. So we want to make sure that we don't give the consent unless we're sure that the website or the uh, location that's being participated in online is secure. So this law protects individuals from age 0 to 13 from being victimized uh, by accidentally sharing this information. Parents must give their consent, and they are not allowed to even set up their website in a way to collect this information without first having authenticated parental consent. Continuing to press upon your children to be good students, to go into what they're doing and to reflect and delete messages that ask for personal information. A lot of times their emails will be filled with spam. A lot of times they'll go through messages that uh, were in a group text that oftentimes didn't pertain to them but may have inappropriate information in them. And getting into a good habit of deleting inappropriate messages or deleting junk from their emails and their text inboxes really calls for them to be good students, and using their knowledge of reflection and going into adjusting those different inboxes and folders from information that's not relevant that could possibly expose them to threats. Also, this is huge, knowing about the GPS enabled applications, knowing that they can be tracked just from saying that it's okay for them to use their location while they're using the application. That application can keep their location as long as that has been clicked okay, until you close it or until you say that it's no longer okay for you to use that tracking signal. That needs to be communicated to your child. That needs to be a huge awareness so that they're not being followed or tracked by an innocent application that was used to locate a store or something that had to do with an educational activity. We don't want them to be exposed participating in something innocent, because there are people out there that will take advantage. It's your responsibility, parents, to really get involved with what's going on in the lives of your kids. They will not know unless you teach them. It's one thing for you to be a helicopter parent. You're constantly hovering over them, trying to figure out what they're doing, what they're doing, what they're doing. But really being able to get into a conversation and helping them to understand where you're coming from, and then too, you understanding where they're coming from is of vital importance. You really want to also understand what are the practices of these different sites and applications that are being used by your students each day. They go into a school situation where they're introduced to all type of different social opportunities and activities. And again, when it comes down to participating online, that's something that you can control directly. It's one thing trying to control what they're doing when they're not in your site, but when they're participating online, that's something that we can look at directly and have a very, very conservative approach to what they're doing. We can use discernment and allow our discernment to be a model for how they are to develop the habit of making good choices. Know your rights, parents. Know that you're protected. Know that you cannot take pictures. You cannot be videotaped. You cannot be audio recorded. You cannot be identified in terms of where you are or who you are in any way from age 0 to 13 without having your permission first. So understand that these things will really give you the best start in how to really access the best ways to think about the ideas that come along with protecting your children from online predators and from thieves that want to use your personal information fraudulently. Now, we've reached the end of our presentation, and again, I really want to thank you for sticking through this module that is really intended to help you understand more of what the threats are and how you can protect yourself. And I've already located a couple of example websites of what you can just Google in terms of things to help you protect your children better. This website gives you a good look at what can be done to protect your children from using things such as YouTube. There are safety modes that can be enabled. It will walk you through how to do that here. There are things such as NetNanny that are a third-party filtering tool that allow you to, at no cost, know exactly what's been going on with your child online. It's almost as if you have a nanny online. There's also different filters for your different operational systems here, for your YouTube usage, some that come with a nominal fee. So again, learning how to use the internet to learn how to protect your children is very important. Here's one of the Net Nanny, one of the applications that we looked at before on the other page, Net Nanny. It really gives you a good look at some of the different features that are here for free, if I'm not mistaken, from Net Nanny. It gives you so many different options. So again, just checking out things like this can really give you a really good handle on what you can do. You don't have to just think that setting a tricky password is enough. From setting a good discipline in your home for what's appropriate and what's not. Here's one more site that gives you a good look at 5 of the best apps that are used to protect teens online. App Certain is one that's been used by a lot of parents, and it's free. It has a curfew mode. It gives you a way to really limit the time, which is one of the strategies that we talked about before. So going out onto the internet, and here we go again, I see that the Net Nanny was indeed not free, but there is some nominal fees involved here. But when we think about the cost of our security, it's priceless. So understanding that the cost of a pizza per month would really secure our kids' livelihood and our families' network online, we really want to understand that these things can be done without taking too much time out of your day, without being too much of a hassle, but just learning how to take these different steps to secure your family. So again, I thank you so much for participating, and would you please be so kind as to just answer the questions that come along with the survey after.